can take a message, you can use words, and you can elicit reactions. With comedy, the reaction is a laugh. With public speaking, sometimes the reaction will be, if it's transformational speaking, transformative speaking, it'll be a person will make a change in their life for the better. With marketing, you're inspiring people to buy or to take some type of action, call to action. Download this, buy this, whatever it is. And I just love the idea of influencing people with words.
What is going on, Schmoozers? Welcome back to the podcast that helps proud Jews promote their personal brands. I am David Cobby, and we are back for our 11th episode. Thank you so much to all of you that have listened to all my episodes. Some of my episodes really means a lot to me that I've gotten to episode 11, and I appreciate your continued support. My next guest today is dedicated to transforming speeches and conversations across Jewish communities in America. Through his work with the Maggid Method, he has helped hundreds of individuals improve their public speaking skills and wow Jewish audiences. Now, I know all of you have been there before, in synagogue, in shul, when a sermon or a D'Var Torah is being given, and the person speaking is doing a horrible job. Well, this individual is fixing that and revolutionizing how we give D'Var Torah. Earlier in his career, he also has experience working for SNL and Howard Stern, which he used to translate over to the Maggid Method. Please welcome to my show today, Daniel Steinberg. Daniel, how is it going today?
It's going good. A lot better after that intro. It makes me sound like really a superstar. Thank you.
Listen, I'm very excited for our conversation. I think you got a very strong personal brand, very unique, coming from the, SNL kind of comedy space into the public speaking with Jewish communities. And what you're doing, quite frankly, and you're gonna do a better job of telling us what you do than I do. But what you're doing is, I think it's phenomenal to just go out there and with the Maggid Method, and we'll talk about this later, but I think it is such a good mission that you have in mind to kind of help people with public speaking, right? Because my generation, as I'm sure you know, my generation doesn't really know how to public speak. Like, we're on our phones all day. So I really, again, appreciate you coming on the show and very excited to talk to you.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the last human skills to stand, I think, when AI takes over the world. So, I advocate everybody getting good at it. There's some soft human skills, like sales and, teamwork and certain human skills that are just, they're going to be in short supply. And I think that's really something people should invest in. It's got its own merits on its own, but I think really, the more human skills you can anchor yourself to, the more you'll kind of, AI proof your career.
Exactly. No, AI something scary, and it's I think I've read millions of articles where it's like, like you said, like there's going to be such an emphasis on soft skills when AI is doing all the hard technical stuff. And it's just going to be very interesting to see how, I'm going into the workforce next year. It's going to be my, first real job working in corporate America and doing all this stuff, and how much my job is going to change in 5-10 years from now. Because quite frankly, like 2 years ago, maybe it was when ChatGPT got released. And I mean, I'm sure you've used ChatGPT to your advantage, but like, to be honest, like ChatGPT helps me a lot for this podcast. Like, I don't get all these questions off the top of my head, because like I gotta come up with some questions that are good. Obviously, I don't do everything with ChatGPT, but AI is definitely a very helpful tool. But at the same time, it's like, is it going to take over? So I think you made a really good point there.
Yeah. I heard somewhere, I forget exactly the quote, but someone said, like, in the future, there's going to be like a dog guarding like the supercomputer, and the only job of humans is going to be to feed the dog to prevent, humans touching the supercomputer. Like, that's all that's going to be left. So, it's a little bit scary. We don't know where the future is headed, but I think that if you can strip everything down to basic, human interaction, human connection, you can't go wrong.
Right. I 100% agree. So, Daniel, first order of business on this podcast, to kind of set up our personal brands, your personal brand, is to talk about your Jewish geography profile. So we're basically going to give everybody the rundown of where you're from, kind of going to ask you a couple questions about your Jewish identity, etc. And then we'll get into the actual questions. So are you ready for the Jewish geography profile?
Yeah, shoot.
All right. So Daniel, where are you from?
Well, most recently, I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I've lived here for about 15 years. Before that, Palo Alto, California. Before that, Israel for 7 years. And before that, Rockland County, New York. And before that, Rochester, New York, Syracuse, New York, Binghamton, New York, and born in the Bronx.
Wow. Wow. So you've been pretty much everywhere. There's nowhere else you need to go.
Yeah, I like to tell people I've lived in the East, the Middle East, the West, and the Midwest, but I haven't been north. So those are the only places I haven't been yet. So we'll see where the rest of my life takes me. But
Like
those,
that.
yeah.
When you were younger, did you do any youth groups or go to sleepaway camp? If so, what sleepaway camps or youth groups?
Yeah. I was in junior NCSY
Okay.
As a kid, and I went to 2 sleepaway camps. I went to a camp in Allentown. Was it Allentown? Near Allentown. It was Poconos. I think it's called it was called Camp Dora Golding. I don't know if you ever heard of that. And then another camp called Camp Maggid Method, which is not so far away. I think that was in the Catskills. And those were two sleepaway experiences that I had. Those were fun. It was like 10 to 13, 10 to 12, something like that. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So now we have a very Jewish hot take kind of question. So Daniel, you can't change the 10 commandments, but if you were able to change, add, replace something in the Aseret Dibrot or the 10 commandments, what law would you add or replace, or would you keep it the same?
I think I would add, maybe don't be a jerk. I think that's kind of an unwritten rule, but I think maybe if it appeared in stone, engraved in stone, maybe people take it a little more seriously. Don't be a jerk. Yeah.
I like it. I feel like that's a rule that a lot of people forget nowadays.
Yeah. The other ones are good, but I think that one's important.
Exactly. All right. So final question, kind of on Jewish geography profile, icebreaker-esque segment. Who is someone that inspires you?
It's a good question. I've been inspired by different people at different times. And different inspiration in different areas of my life. So, I have like an inspiration for comedy, let's say, for example, and I have an inspiration for transformative speaking, and I have inspiration for a spiritual life. So I have a lot of different inspirations. I don't think anyone checks all of the boxes, but I'm currently very inspired by Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a rabbi in New York. He has a congregation called Eish Kodesh. You can look him up. He's probably the most transformative speaker that I know. That I've kind of absorbed a lot of his wisdom and kind of ran off to the races with it and came up with my own method. But he was the one who made me realize that one of the steps of my method, which we could talk about soon, which is transformation over information, which is, you're not just trying to convey information, Torah messages, educate people. There's classes for that. But when you get up to speak, you're really trying to change people's lives, make them, and the way he does that with the authenticity and the vulnerability and the genuineness and the insight into his own life, that very much inspired me. I listened to him maybe an hour a day for probably like 3 years. And I've just absorbed, all of his personality, his stories, and his outlook on life. And so, I was a latecomer to the game. People are huge fans of him, and I only kind of discovered him around COVID when I was at home and I didn't really have much to do, and I would go on walks and I would listen to him, and I just started to really, really resonate with his sincerity and his authenticity and his knowledge. Obviously, he's a huge Torah scholar. But the way he communicated that was par excellence, and I just drew a lot from that. So I'm going to go with him for now.
Okay, that's listen, that's a great answer, and I feel like one thing that a lot of people, maybe not in like the religious sphere, whatever, don't really understand is because of technology, right? Like now we're in a prime age where we have podcasts, we have, all the social media channels or whatever. But I think social media has helped rabbis and people in the Jewish sphere and public speakers, whatever, like share their message more, like much more easily. And I think it's so cool that you have, these traditional rabbis who are, maybe they're black hat, maybe they're not black hat, whatever it is, but they're making podcasts and they're sharing their learning via these podcasts. And, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, however long it is since like podcasts were actually founded, like that would be a foreign concept. But now like you can actually do like learning and you can learn stuff, like you said, while you're on a walk. So I think that's just like amazing that, people, especially in the Jewish sphere, are getting into this. And it's a good way to kind of like, grow your personal brand, which is exactly why I'm doing
Right,
this.
right, for sure. Yeah, I don't even think he would characterize what he does as a podcast. He just gives classes and someone records them and uploads them. But yeah, I mean, the idea is the same. I mean, through Zoom, through technology, the ability to be able to do that is amazing. And I had only listened to him. I'd never seen him before. I tried to see him a whole bunch of times, and I'd only heard his audio classes. And I'm trying to think, it was last summer I got to see him for the first time. He was in Cleveland, which is about 2.5 hours away from me. So I drove to go see him, 2.5 hours each way for a 45-minute class. But it was an experience. It was a total different experience, and it was completely different than listening. It was so incredibly different. I mean, the atmosphere that he created. He was sitting at a table where he had candles lit, like these long candles, and the light was dim, and he was sitting, not standing behind like a podium and lecturing, but he was sitting, and it was very, very intimate, and it was the environment. I think they had like a kumsitz, like kind of like a, like everybody kind of hands around each other singing beforehand to kind of create that environment, that unity. And when he got up, he was speaking with his eyes closed, and none of that came across on audio. So it was really, really interesting. And I can't imagine how much more I would have been transformed if I had the ability to see him for an hour a day live. And that was just, being able to hear him through these audio lectures. And just, so yeah, so it's amazing, but it still can't replace that human experience. That's, I guess that's the drum I'm going to beat, throughout this podcast. But, it's the human experience, the human connection that really, really clinches it.
Right. So Daniel, you seem like a very smart guy, but you still, take initiative to learn, to, whether it's Torah, whether it's, I don't know, something related to public speaking. Like you always are, it seems to me like you're always looking to like learn more. Can you kind of talk about like how learning impacts your day-to-day routine? Is it, a day-to-day thing? Are you learning once a week? Like what does learning look like in Daniel Steinberg's calendar?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the compliment that I come across as smart. I have ways to do that. Certain words I use and certain postures. Scratching my chin. So yeah, I come across much smarter than I actually am. But I could probably pull it off for an hour before you get on to me. So, are you talking about Jewish learning? Or are you talking about just any type of learning, or?
You know what? It could be any type of learning, really.
Okay. Well, let's start with Jewish learning because that's kind of first and foremost in my life. Jewish learning, I have a schedule that I've been keeping to. I kind of, over the past year, I slowed down a little bit, but for the past 3 years or so, 5 hours a day of Jewish learning. That includes 3 hours of very, very in-depth Talmud study, half an hour of Chumash, of the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, the written Torah, half an hour of halacha, of Jewish law, and then an hour where I kind of alternate between either listening to like Rabbi Weinberger, like for an hour, or just working on my relationship with God. What that might be learning, that might be talking, but that's kind of like an hour that's kind of chiseled away for that. So that I picked that up right around COVID time, and I was able to keep it for a couple of years. I took on the role of an interim rabbi at one of the synagogues here in Columbus, Ohio, and my schedule kind of just got thrown off by that because you're dealing with a lot more stuff. And then COVID, everything was shut down, and I was just able to go for long walks and think in Torah learning and so now it's probably about half that. On a good day, it's half that. But the ideal, the golden standard for me is to get back up to those 5 hours. And the funny thing is that comes from another inspiration of mine, which is Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is I think for the newer generation, they have a hard time relating to his comedy, but in terms of just a crafts person, in terms of the craft of comedy, he's, there's his dedication, his work ethic. There's no one as committed to that as him. And I was watching a podcast with him, and he talked about how he sets aside from 7 in the morning to 12 in the afternoon every day for writing. And that's, I mean, he's a billionaire by this point, but he's still cranking away. And that's what keeps him, the wheels churning. That's what keeps him fresh, like what keeps him young and keeps producing his art, and his vitality. So he says that, though he may or may not write those full 5 hours from 7 to 12, but those hours are locked away for that purpose. I tried to do that with my Torah learning because I wanted to be as committed to my spirituality as he was to his craft of comedy, because that's something I can relate to because I'm an ex-comedian. And I wasn't able to keep those specific hours, but I tried the hardest I could to keep 5 hours. And I've been able to do that for a couple of years going. So that's been really great. And in terms of other learning, I'm very fascinated by marketing. I'm fascinated by persuasion, influence, those types of things. Storytelling. So I'm reading a book now on TEDx talks and storytelling methods and things like that. So that stuff I can't get enough of. I love marketing. I love storytelling. I love persuasion, influence, copywriting. Those types of things are really fascinating to me. So I ferret away time for those too where I can, and that's how I keep my vitality. That's how I stay fresh and smart, or come across looking smart.
Daniel, I can already tell we're gonna have a phenomenal conversation. Like I'm a huge marketing nerd. Also, that's what I study in school. It's partially why I'm doing this podcast, is like marketing, proud Jews and personal branding. But before we go into nerding out of marketing, you said you're an ex-comedian. I want to talk about your time with SNL and Howard Stern. So you were there in your early young career, and I mean,
I was. I think when I was working for SNL, I was 18. It was right out of college. Actually, I was in college at the time. It was an internship, and that was 1993 to 94. 91, 92. 91, 92. Excuse me. And I, at the time, and again, this is, to your listeners, I'm going to sound like a dinosaur, but at the time, the hippest thing on television was David Letterman. Like it's just hard to believe because he kind of became stale and a bit of a curmudgeon and just not very funny anymore. But at the time, there really was nothing hipper on television than David Letterman. And he had a slot. I think it was like, maybe it was at 12:30 to 1:30. I think it was 12:30 to 1:30 in the morning. And he used to do these top 10 lists, and he used to do all these like wacky things. And there was it was just very, very, very revolutionary. And I wanted to be an intern for him. I wanted to kind of soak up that environment because I was just really into it. And it just really spoke to me. But it was impossible. It was, the internships were booked up for like years in advance, and there was no way that you could possibly get in. So at the time, SNL was really kind of like on the decline. This was after a whole bunch of stars had left the show. Dana Carvey and Mike Myers, they had done this film called Wayne's World, and they left. They left, and I think Dennis Miller had left the news, the Weekend Update section, and so it was kind of in a state of disarray, and it really wasn't very popular. And I remember the HR person at NBC, she said, "Listen, I can get you a spot on SNL as an intern, but I can't get on Letterman." And I remember actually thinking, like, do I really want to do that? Is that really that like special anymore? Like it just didn't. That's how kind of like lame the show was at the time. But I figured it would get me in the building. And once you're in the building, then kind of things can happen. And this is when I talk about the building. This is 30 Rock. From the show 30 Rock. This is 30 Rockefeller Center where all that stuff is recorded, taped. So I did that, and I think I'm trying to remember the highlights where I was an extra on the show, which is kind of cool. I have a little still from that, that it actually happened. I was only on air for a second, but it was interesting because it's live, so there's a camera there. It's a 4 or 5 camera shoot, and if you're familiar with television production, so there's a director in the control room, and he's speaking to all these different cameras. He's saying, camera 4, give me a wide shot. Camera 3, close up. And he's directing over there, and he's punching the buttons, and each camera goes live as he's lining up the shots. And I remember there's a little like a light on top of the camera, and when that camera is live, it lights up, and that's how you know that you're being broadcast to like millions of people with maybe a 7-second delay or something like that. So I remember like when that camera was pointed, and I remember watching, and then that light goes up, and I'm like, wow, millions of people are watching this right now. And it was really, and that was a time for the internet, and maybe there was cable, I guess, but it was, people were watching. It was it was network television, and people were watching it, and it was really cool. And so that was a big highlight. And I didn't really get to write or anything. It was a very kind of guarded, insular environment. Everything was unionized, and people weren't sure if they were going to be there from one season to the next, and everybody was like defensive about their jobs being taken away. So I had to kind of like know my place. My place was to go get food for the writers and for the stars. I would schlep food from like these midtown restaurants and put them in a cab, and then just bring them up the freight elevator at the back of NBC. But it was fun. I mean, I got to see all these stars, and hobnob with I got to meet Paul McCartney and Alec Baldwin, and I got to see all the musical acts too. When they were rehearsing during the week, I got to sit and just watch them rehearse as if it was like a private concert. So I saw Pearl Jam and like all these cool bands and stuff, and it was just they were maybe 20 feet away from me. So just being in that environment was a really fun environment. Watching the show get put together from they probably rolled around like Monday morning through Saturday night when it went live. That was like there was electricity. It would build and build and build and build and build, and then they had a dress rehearsal Saturday night, like around 10, or maybe even a little bit earlier, from like 9 to 11, and then they had an audience for that, a live audience, and depending on what worked, they would keep in, and what didn't work, they would scratch. They always did more material than they needed. And so by the time it went live at 11:30, you were seeing, they'd been through a bunch of rehearsals and kind of calibrated on the fly and decided what was actually going to air live or not. And then there was afterwards, there was the cast parties. You got to go to these cool bars in Manhattan and meet Madonna and Eddie Murphy and like all these people. It sounds a lot cooler than it was to be at these cast parties. There was no bigger divide between interns and like non-important people than like the celebrities. Like you were literally a nobody at these parties, like nobody. And to the point where it was so depressing that like towards the end of the season, I didn't bother going to any of them because they were so depressing. Like it was so obvious that you were nobody when you were at these parties. And the last party that I attended was the end of the season. They may still do this. They had a huge cast party on the rink, that rink, the ice skating rink at 30 Rock. So the party moves outdoors because now it's May, and it's at the end of May, and there anyone who wouldn't talk to you all year long is in a good mood and talks to you and is friendly, and it's nice, and it lasts all night. It went to the morning. They served like dinner at like after the show, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then they served breakfast also because it just goes on. It went on for like 5-6 hours. And Conan O'Brien was there, and this person was there, and everyone, and just people were nice and friendly, and it was just kind of a cool environment. And that was the end of the internship, And then after that summer, I went to Israel to visit Israel for the first time. And when I came back, I had scored an internship working with Howard Stern, and that's a whole other story in and of itself. But that's So that was that was my kind of entree into that world of entertainment. Yeah,
I love it.
yeah. I'll wait for the next
I,
question because I feel like
no,
I'm
no,
glad.
that was great. And I think your experience was so cool, kind of talking about maybe like how, and again, it's different now because there's so much transparency and on the internet, but I feel like, you get this internship at SNL, which is great. Don't get me wrong. It's great experience. Like you were around literally the best, comedy writers in the world. And you got to play a role in helping this, production, which is one of the most famous productions in all of America, be successful. But I think a lot of what we're seeing nowadays and even back then is there's some like deceiving aspects of an internship. So do you think that like going into this SNL and even the Howard Stern internship, do you think some information was like withheld from you that you didn't really understand like what you were actually doing going into the internship? Or did you have full clarity going in knowing that like you would only be an extra for an SNL skit, or you'd only be doing X, Y, and Z for Howard Stern?
Well, the experience with working with Howard was a lot different than the experience working for SNL because SNL was a huge network. It was a show on a huge network, and I really didn't expect to actually even participate in anything there. Like it was pretty much clear to me that I was a lackey. But that's what you do. You accept that and you absorb and you keep your mouth shut and you learn, you try to make relationships. And I was just happy to be there. I had no complaints. I had no compunctions. I was just happy to be there, because everybody wanted it. And I somehow the stars aligned that I was actually able to get it. I don't even know how out of all the people, I didn't have any particular experience or any particular merit or award to be there. So I was just very happy to be there. Small kid growing up from Binghamton, New York, and here I am at the top of the 17th floor of 30 Rock. Just hobnobbing with celebrities. I was just happy to be there.
Mm-hmm. Did you and Howard ever talk about Judaism or being Jewish? Was that ever a conversation that came up between the two of you?
It's so interesting you mentioned that because we didn't, but there was a certain type of like unspoken, I don't know where it came from, but there was some unspoken connection that I felt we had based on that. I think he understood that I came from like a religious background. I wasn't wearing a kippah at the time. I was Jewish, and I was a young guy, and I kind of at the time I kind of looked like him a little bit. Maybe when he was younger, I was kind of tall and gangly and skinny and kind of a wise guy. And I think that there was some connection there that he went to some Jewish summer camps and stuff, and I feel like there was some connection, but it was never articulated. It was always kind of implicit, and we never really spoke about it, which is interesting because his daughter became religious. Believe it or not, his daughter's he has two daughters. One of them is she's an artist, and she's religious. I forget. I think maybe her name is Emily, but she's actually Orthodox now. Just really like bizarre.
Wow. Wow. You'd think like
Yeah.
Howard Stern is obviously like he's Jewish, but he's like, he's the definition of Jewish, right? Like he's got the Jewish personality. Obviously the last name's Stern, but I could totally be wrong. Howard, if you're listening to this, I'm so sorry if I'm offending you, but like he's just not like a practicing Jew, and that's okay. I mean, like, it's
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He's not into that. I mean, I think he's pro-Israel.
that's good.
Uh, it's interesting also because for the first, I don't know, maybe 20 years of his radio career, he always used to say that he was half Jewish, and he said that his father's Jewish and his mother was Italian. That's which would not make him, in Jewish law that wouldn't make you Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
But that was his thing, and he used that to be able to kind of equally offend everybody. He's saying like he could offend the Jews, and but he wasn't necessarily Jewish, even though I think people associate him with being Jewish. But he said he was half Jewish, and that was the line that I actually believed for a very long time. I was very surprised to find out that he's actually 100% Jewish. His mom was Jewish also, but for the longest time, he said he wasn't. I didn't really understand that he was Jewish. I didn't even. I think when we were kind of connecting on that maybe subliminal level, I still think I wasn't 100% sure that he was actually Jewish. But I think later on he kind of came out, so to speak. So Yeah.
Hey man, it's Josh. I love it. So obviously you had great time in the comedy sphere, but now let's transition a little bit over to your work with marketing. So you've got a lot of experiences working with, in, and around marketing.
Yeah.
Talk about what draws you to marketing. Like, what's the most like interesting aspect of marketing that just like keeps you going, and maybe touch on some of the experiences you've had as well.
Right. Well, for me, I think it really is linked into the reason that I enjoy comedy so much. It's because it moves people. You can take a message, you can use words, and you can elicit reactions. With comedy, the reaction is a laugh. With public speaking, sometimes the reaction will be, if it's transformational speaking, transformative speaking, it'll be a person will make a change in their life for the better. With marketing, you're inspiring people to buy or to take some type of action, a call to action. Download this, buy this, whatever it is. And I just love the idea of influencing people with words. And marketing, it's images as well. So a picture can speak 1,000 words. So it's the same idea. It's moving people from point A to point B through creativity. And the more creative and interesting that message is, the more I get excited about it. For me, again, like when I graduated high school, I wasn't 100% sure that I didn't know where I wanted to go into, but I knew I wanted to do something like within advertising or messaging. And I remember going to one of the huge ad agencies on Fifth Avenue or Madison Avenue in New York. It's called Young and Rubicam. I don't know if it still exists, but it was responsible for some of like the greatest ads of all time. And I don't think this is their ad, but there was an ad for J&B. It's J&B Scotch. And they had a print ad once, and you can look this up. It's one of the most brilliant ads I've ever seen. And the ad it's just kind of like a blank page, and there's this kind of like typeset font, this very, cool font. And it says, Ingle L's, Ingle L's, Ingle L's. It was just like two or three times. And then at the bottom, it says, the holidays are just not the same without J and B, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, when I saw that, like I could plot, like it's just so brilliant how you can do something with that. Now, how that translates to people actually buying J and B, it's unclear to me exactly how to make that leap. But I love that the beauty of that messaging and that creativity to sell things to inspire people to buy. That's my attachment to marketing. It's really all boils down to that transformative influence through creativity, whether it's words or pictures or the combination of the two.
Mm-hmm. No, wow, that's a really cool kind of. I'm again nerd for marketing. Love kind of the unique advertisements, because nowadays it's so easy to just like put out ads and ads and ads. Like you can put out millions of ads and content and whatever. One thing I do want to touch on before we get more into the Maggid Method is the attention span of consumers nowadays. So my generation, I think, has like a 2-second attention span where we're scrolling through TikTok, whatever, walking on the streets of New York. You maybe have like a 1-second attention span. I don't know. And I think it's becoming much harder nowadays for marketers to actually capture the attention of consumers and have a call to action, like you said. So from your experience working with companies, with people, with customers, whatever it is, what are people doing nowadays to kind of capture the attention of people with such short attention spans?
Yeah. Well, there's clickbait, which is, it's really easy to capture someone's attention. You can just throw up a picture of a scantily clad woman or something really shocking. It's not really hard to get people's attention. I mean, you could drive down the street and you see these sign spinners, these guys that, like, have you ever seen that? And immediately your attention is drawn to that. So it's not hard to get attention. What's really hard is to sustain the attention, and as soon as people realize that you don't have anything of value to offer them, they tune out. So you can get the attention. That's what I think a lot of lazy marketers bank on is, let's see if we can get them. And once we get them, hopefully they'll stick around. but no one really sticks around. If that's your strategy, it's a losing strategy because you're going to throw a lot of money, a lot of work behind ads and getting people's attention. But if there's nothing really of substance there, people are just going to tune out. So the real trick is to sustain attention, is to hold that attention. And when people talk about attention spans being short, it's a little bit of a misnomer, because if you think about the trajectory of the length of movies over the years, you can Google this. There's graphs. Movies now are upwards of like 2 hours, 20 minutes, 2 hours, 30 minutes. They're getting longer. So it doesn't. So attention spans are not getting shorter. It's just we're much more selective as to where we put our attention. So people are willing to invest their attention in things if you have something of substance to offer. So that's in my mind, that's where the hard work is rewarded of marketers who know how to sustain that attention. It's great to get the attention up front as well, but the real hard work, the heavy lifting has to be done and to sustain that attention all the way through, to rope people along, to get them a little bit more interested, with a reveal at the end, with a payoff that is a twist, all those types of things. That's where you're gonna see the reward for your efforts in marketing. I'm not getting the attention. The attention is, shiny objects will attract anybody at all times, but that's not really where you want to invest your efforts.
Mm-hmm. This is a perfect transition into talking about your work with the Maggid Method, and I want you to, since it's a part of your personal brand and it's your personal mission to kind of help Jewish communities around the world improve their public speaking, sermons, D'Var Torahs, whatever it is. So why don't you talk about what the Maggid Method is and what its essential kind of like mission statement is, so to speak?
Yeah. So, for me, I call it the Maggid Method just because you're pronouncing it actually correctly. The kind of like slurred Yiddishism, translates to Maggid, comes out that way. But it's essentially, it's my way of bridging the two worlds that I find myself traversing at all times. It's that original world of comedy, of marketing, of transformations, and applying it to things that are eternal, spiritual, substantial, not just fleeting, a laugh here or a purchase product over there. Things that are really eternal and permanent and eternal. So that's I really been trying to take all those principles that are so useful in a temporary world and apply them to a permanent world, a more long-lasting, spiritual, life-changing type of experience. So that's just kind of like a preamble to what I'm talking about over here. And so the Maggid Method is based on principles where, like you said, I mean, we can call it attention spans are shrinking, but people are just not paying attention for whether they're shrinking or they're just not interested in what most people have to offer anymore. How do we get them to pay attention to the important things? And the way we do that is traditionally it's just been the message. We hope message is important enough, people will pay attention. That doesn't really work anymore. There's too much noise, people are too distracted. So it doesn't help anymore. It used to be that a person just could get up and speak, and based on his credentials or maybe based on what he was teaching, people would be polite and they would listen and be attentive. And now it's involuntary. People just tune out. They just can't. They can't. You can almost see it within about 10, 15 seconds. People just start to either nod off or pick something up or go to their phones. They cannot, because of the pacing of the media and the amount of media that we're bombarded with. It's almost impossible to give your attention to things that are not interesting or that you're invested in, which is fine. I mean, I think that's the way it should be. It really levels the playing arena. It makes everybody up their game. People are only going to pay attention. And this is my comedian brain talking, because, the greatest, most popular comedian in the world only has about a minute or two before people will also tune him out. You can't ride on your merits. You can't ride on your history, rather. It's all merit based. It's all, are you entertaining right now? And if you're not, even if you're Jackie Mason or Jerry Seinfeld or or Kevin Hart or whoever, people just won't pay attention anymore. They just can't. They don't care who you are. They just care as long, are you entertaining? Are you interesting? Do you have something of substance to offer? So I kind of love the idea that it's come down to this, where it forces everyone to just show up and give it their best. And if they don't, then you'll just go to the wayside like everybody else. People, you just, it's a very, very even keeled playing field. And the people that rise to the top are the people that know how to hold people's attention, not get people's attention. Those are the flashes in the pans, but the sustaining of the attention, the long, how could a comedian perform for 45 minutes straight, for an hour straight? How's that possible? It's only because he's able to connect with the audience. They relate to him. They're invested in what he has to say. They're having a transformative experience. They're walking out feeling better about themselves when they see the comedian's train wreck of a life. He gives them a vision of how things could be in the future. And these are all elements that I've picked up on through the years, whether it's through comedy, whether it's through persuasion, influence, marketing, that I realize goes into every successful story, movie, product, business. They're all these timeless principles. So that's what I figured. If I can solve that problem of boring speeches, people have actually real substance to impart. If I could solve that through my experiences, through my background, then that would be the golden ticket. So that's really what I've invested in right now, is trying to help people who have very important messages to impart, but and they have a platform, but the audience is just not able to kind of get through to what they have to say. They're not willing to wait, or maybe they can't even wait till you get to the point. So my goal is to help those people get their message across.
Right. And I think with D'Var Torah specifically, one of the things that I think contributes to the lack of attention span, or whatever it is D'Var Torah are usually, at least this is how it goes for my synagogue, like on Shabbat, they're right before Kiddush. They're always right before Kiddush. And I'm just like, that's such a dumb idea. No offense, but like, it's such a dumb idea. Cause like, what are you doing after you're done with the Don Olam? You want to go get schnapps at Kiddush. Like, that's the first thing you want to do. Right.
Right.
So it's like, do you really want to listen to a D'Var Torah by some guy who's going to sit up there and talk about, this dry topic in the Torah and crack a few really bad jokes? Like, no, you want to go get your Kiddush, get your schnapps, and get out of there. Like, it's just like, I think that's also like in the Jewish sphere specifically, I feel like that's also a big contributor to this lack of attention span.
You're setting him up to fail by or her, whoever is speaking, but you're putting that person in between them and the food. It's like, imagine that. It's like they're standing in front of the buffet and they're just like, listen to me, and unless you have something that's better than the food, you're going to fail.
Right. So going kind of on the topic of public speaking, and obviously you're working comedy. How essential is comedy, cracking jokes, bringing humor to situation? How essential is that to public speaking? Like, have you had or coached people that maybe don't have a good sense of humor and that are still able to like communicate their message across without being comedic? Or do you think that comedy is essential for most situations in public speaking?
Yeah, I don't think it's essential. It's icing on the cake. It's a tool that is extremely effective if you know how to wield it properly. If you don't, you could end up hurting people. You could end up looking stupid. You could end up just taking the audience in a direction where they groan instead of opening up and warming up to you. So I would advise, you can kind of get a sense if people have a sense of humor, right out of the starting gate or not. And so people that do, I would advise them to use it and use it responsibly. But no, it's not essential. It's not essential. There are other tools. It's I think that the authenticity and the vulnerability go a long, long way. Coupled together with comedy, they go even farther. They'll skyrocket you to the moon. But you don't necessarily have to be funny. You don't have to be entertaining. you have to be real. That's really what you have to be. The audience has to be able to see themselves in you, and they have to say, here's a person who had a struggle, a challenge, some problem that they had. This is how they solved it. And the audience is subconsciously what they're looking at. They're saying like, well, if he could do it, if he could climb out of that hole, like maybe I could do that too. And maybe I would do it that way. He did it that way. Maybe I do it this way. But they're seeing themselves in you, and that's really the most important thing. You're breaking down the wall between the audience and you. So you're not talking at them, you're talking with them. For me, that was a huge turning point in comedy. When I began doing comedy, it was all just about, whatever would get a laugh. You just try everything. You're just a monkey, and you're just trying to make people laugh. And there's no attention paid to a connection with the audience per se. You're just trying to elicit a laugh. You scratch your armpit, eat a banana, you just do whatever you can to get a laugh. You try. But as you get more mature, you start to evolve, and you start to develop a certain style. And when there was a comedian that I saw, I don't know if you know, his name is Mark Maron. He has a podcast now called WTF. He's probably one of the first podcasters that elevated the medium to its popularity. He was a comedian in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and he was a very angry guy, really interesting guy. I think he went through some alcohol and drug abuse and stuff, and kind of sobered up, but he couldn't get work. He was just a really bitter, angry guy, and it was very interesting to watch him. He's since moved past there. Podcasting, what he did was he started a podcast where he started interviewing all the comedians that he'd worked with over the past 10 or 15 years, and was talking to them about what they were doing and why they were successful and why he wasn't. And it was really interesting. I mean, he had one of Robin Williams, and every comedian that you could think of, he came through his garage, and he would interview them and talk to them and as a peer, and they talk about their careers, and he talked about his career, and it was really interesting. And the podcast became so successful that he had Obama on. He had Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones. I mean, it's skyrocketed. But he was a comedian, and so in the early days when I started doing comedy, I remember I went to a club once, and it was like 1:00 in the morning, and I wanted to leave, and I was with a friend of mine, and he said, stick around for this guy, watch this guy, just to see what he does. And it was, I was doing open mics at the time. I was really just wasn't interested in seeing another comedian. I was only interested in my own style. So, but I said, I'll stick around. Okay, so there were 4 people in the audience. It was like 1:00 in the morning, 4 people in the audience. What he did that night, it just flipped a switch in my brain. He was sitting on a stool, which was the first thing. I'd never seen a comedian sit on a stool. I knew there was a stool up there. I didn't, people put their drinks on it. They put their notes on it. I'd never actually seen a comedian sit on a stool before. And immediately it created this environment of intimacy where it was just like, we were all together in almost like a living room. He was obviously had a microphone, so he was leading, but it was, and he was on a stage, but it was the way that wall just came right down, and he would talk to the people in the crowd as if not like to do shtick with them, but actually talking to them and getting into their souls. And when I saw that, and it wasn't just trying to be funny. You could see who he was from the comedy. You had such a glimpse into who this person was, and it was such a broken type of personality, which was kind of funny. But it was comedy for him wasn't just to make people laugh. It was self-expression. He was using comedy to express himself in a way that I'd never seen before. And as soon as I saw that, everything had changed. I no longer ever tried to get a laugh just for the sake of getting a laugh. It was all about, how do I mine all of my personal experiences, my angst, my fears, my struggles, my everything, in order to express myself the way I am and have people receive that and see themselves in that. And I never, ever, ever forgot that night. And everything that I do is probably influenced from that night. So I take that to public speaking as well. I prefer, if I didn't have to, I'd prefer to speak without a microphone. I prefer to speak without a podium. I'd like to pace the stage. I try to, in my mind, the quintessential public speaker is a person who can speak to 3,000 people and make it feel like there's only speaking to 3 people, and at the same time, I heard this quote once, and that's why I'm using it. It's not my quote, but speak to 3 people and still give them the magic that you're seeing to 3,000 people, to feel that there's something really big happening. So that's, to me, the quintessential art of public speaking is that intimacy, is that audience connection, is that transformation between the speaker and the audience. If you can't achieve that, experience, like going back to Rabbi Weinberger, where he'll sit there with his eyes closed, and then you have that dark room and the candles, and you don't feel like you're going into the person's world, just email your speech, just text it to us, upload it, and we'll consume it on our own time. There needs to be some human experience there for us to justify all of us sitting in that room quiet and listening to you. And I think a lot of people are just stuck in that old school, mentality that if I get up there, that means that they'll pay attention to me, or if my message is important, they'll pay attention to me. But it's an experience. It's not a class. It's not a lecture. It's got to be an experience. Otherwise, let's all stay home and we can consume it in a more convenient format on our own time.
I love that. One final question that I have for you in regards to the topic of self-expression is, you talk about this comedian changing how you express yourself, right? Self-expression can also be, coined personal story, personal journey, personal brand, right? How has the Maggid Method, the Maggid Method, changed how you express yourself, your personal brand? I mean, you've started this podcast with all these rabbis also, and talking to them about their learnings and their kind of personal brand and how they express themselves. So how has starting the Maggid Method, how has that changed your personal brand?
I'm not sure how to answer that. It's a good
If
question.
it has at all. If it hasn't, then you could say that too.
I'm trying. I think what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to drink my own medicine. And it's funny because I advocate for authenticity, vulnerability, for lack of a better term, transparency. It's not really transparency, but just being genuine, sincere, and not putting on airs or being more sophisticated than you actually are. And there's parts of this that I don't completely have figured out. And as the marketer part of me, I want to show a finished product. I want to show a polished product. I want to show something that's really, beautiful, like the Ingle Bells ad, Ingle L's. I want to show something gorgeous and beautiful. And I'm not 100% there yet. And so while you've probably seen someone posting on LinkedIn and some of my interviews and stuff, I'm trying to learn in public for the first time, which is quite painful for me. I as a marketer, I like to present a finished product. You don't see the messy work that goes into it, but I'm trying to, like I said, drink my own medicine, and even within this method, it's a little bit meta, but I'm trying to show people along the way that I'm messing up as I'm trying to figure this out myself, and it's okay to mess up a little bit. I think I posted I tried to get someone to help me, and I sent them a cold text message. And then I had a friend tell me that he's like, you blew it, man. Like you came off as like a sleazy salesperson. You need to have kind of come around through the back door, warmed up to him a little bit, maybe mentioned mutual connection, but you just, and I felt so lousy about it afterwards. And so I posted the text, I posted a picture of the text. I'm like, I think I just, violated my own methods, and so I'm trying to kind of take myself not so seriously and laugh along with it, even though it's me personally. And, I'm hoping that is, I'm not doing it intentionally. I'm doing it reluctantly, but I'm finding that it does resonate with people, and that's validating for me, because that's what I'm advocating for other people to do. And if I can't do it myself with my own brand, then I can't expect other people to do it. So
Exactly.
Maybe that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I know I don't want to take up too much of your time, but just to add on really quickly, showing you're vulnerable and showing your mistakes is such a good way of, basically defying what social media tries to do, right? Social media, like you said, marketing, it's all perfect. Everything has to be a perfect, polished, finished product. Which is why, it's again, marketing is becoming such much more challenging not to capture people's attention, but to keep people's attention. So I think really to your point about having a personal brand that's, not necessarily polished, all the time, and showing that vulnerability, I think, and for me personally, I think showing your mistakes has helped you learn from, what you can do, learn like what you can do better and how you can improve. Because like, quite frankly, we're humans, we're not perfect, we mess up. But I think showing we're vulnerable, showing we make mistakes is just a great way of enhancing your personal brand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's there's obviously degrees of that. There's certain things that can kind of come back to haunt you. So, again, with everything, moderation and responsibility, but you can dip your toe in the water and do it. There's just one thing that comes to mind while you were speaking is there's this picture. I think it's Hugh Jackman. Maybe was he the guy who played? Was he in The Greatest Showman? Was you think, or Wolverine? Was he Wolverine also? Or I forget who it was. A really good looking guy, one of the top actors. He posted this picture. My wife showed me. It's him like he fell asleep in a chair, and the guy looks like so unattractive, like so unbelievably unattractive. Like anybody that had like drool, like kind of like. But someone took a picture and he posted it, and like you'd think like celebrities are they're so tight and careful and controlled about what they release, and they get so uptight when pictures of them in candid, situations without makeup or whatever are shown. And it was so endearing that you put on your pants one leg at a time like the rest of us. You're one of the top paid actors. You're a hunk. You're a sex symbol. But he wasn't afraid to just post this kind of like very just really a compromising picture of himself, just to humanize himself. And I think that goes a long way. So, yeah.
100%. So Daniel, where can people find you on social media and et cetera?
Yeah.
Just to...
So for me, I've decided this year to kind of take a break from like the whole social media rat race. So I decided just for professional purposes, I still need to be on social media. So I'm on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, the real Daniel Steinberg. You can find me there, and that's where I post all about the transformative public speaking method and the interviews that I've done. You referenced. I have a podcast called the Maggid Method, where I interview different rabbis around the country rather. Some of the top ones, some of the unsung ones you've never heard of. We'll have interesting transformative methods of speaking that what made me think about rabbis per se is they have to speak every single week, and they have to give substantial messages, and they have an audience there. They can't be boring, and they have to be like you said, they're in between the food, and so they have to really be top of their game. So I interviewed a bunch of them, probably 55 right now so far. And I have a podcast where you can listen to them talk about their methodologies and, highs and lows and some interesting experience, like, time someone fainted in the middle of a sermon and like all sorts of interesting stories and stuff. So, feedback that they got, someone was telling me yesterday about how he was up speaking and the president of the shul was behind him telling him to come down while whispering him, get off the stage. like just crazy stuff, that you would never know from the outside. So I have that podcast, the Maggid Method podcast. I have the LinkedIn stuff where I post content. And then I have a website called themaggidmethod.com where you can download a template of the speaking style that I advocate. And that'll sign you up for some content. And then if you're interested, if you're an individual or organization that has kind of needs to make a difference in people's lives, I'm available for coaching as well.
I love it. So make sure everybody go follow Daniel LinkedIn, go follow the Maggid. I'm sorry, I have to admit I'm Sephardi, so I can't really do I'm not used to pronouncing words like the Ashki way, no offense, but everybody make sure you go follow Daniel. I think template sounds awesome opportunity, even if you're interviewing for a job, you want to refine your public speaking skills. Like clearly this guy knows how to schmooze. We just talked for an hour straight and it felt like 10 minutes. Like this guy knows how to schmooze. He's the real deal. Make sure you hit him up. Also make sure, if you haven't done so already, follow Schmoozing Time on Instagram, Facebook, the Facebook, TikTok, stay up to date with podcast information. Again, huge shout out to Daniel. Till next time, keep schmoozing.